Hey everyone, welcome back to the Jack and Jared podcast. I'm Jack, and Jeremy's here as well. Jeremy, say hi.
Hey,
So we're here. It's episode 12. Thanks for staying with us. And today, I think we have a really interesting episode. What we want to talk about is traditional norms and their potential downfall. One of them in particular that I think is imminent is the downfall of publications, what I would call big brands, big brand publications, and the uprising of individual brands, personal brands. And what I mean by that is in the past, we really needed to rely on the New York Times, the US Today, USA Today, Washington Post, these other publications, because 100 years ago, 50, even 50, 20 years ago, it was really difficult for individuals to get their word across to the masses. Technology wasn't at a point where you could really go on the internet. I guess 20 years ago, it started getting that way with blogging, but even then it wasn't at the point where it was really widespread where you could just post and millions billions of people could see you. And so we relied on publications to help get the word out there, and publications were really the gatekeepers to make sure that the person that you were reading was someone that's been vetted, that could speak intelligently about issues, and things like that. But we're not in that world anymore. We're in a world where any one of us can publish on YouTube or social media, or just write our own blogs. I'm started blogging, and people I've never met are now reading my work and reaching out to me. And so that's what we're kind of talking about, these traditional norms that we have, whether it's the gatekeepers or the traditional rules we have in play. And are they going to downfall? Are they going to? Is there going to be a downfall, and is there going to be an uprising of the individual brands? So, Jeremy, what do you think?
so I'm kind of for it and against it. I like the fact that everyone has a voice, but I also don't like the fact that everyone has a voice. I feel like when it first happened and people started talking on Facebook and coming up with opinions, it was cool because you get to hear more people's opinions, not just like the big brand what they're putting out. But now I don't know how good. I feel like there's a lot of good from it, but there's also a lot of bad. A lot of people have a voice now. I don't want to say people shouldn't have a voice, but some people think they're way too smart and know what's going on more than news publications or journalists who actually have a reputation. So I kind of like the fact that everyone has a voice, that you have a chance of getting out there. I think that's great. But at the same time, I think it's a little bit dangerous because people aren't smart in general. Like, unfortunately, most people don't have critical thinking skills. They don't have good reading comprehension. So a lot of times, if you have for lack of a better word, some bozo putting out some crazy news, a lot of people won't even know that it's crazy news because they won't be able to identify it. So, like, I think it's good, but I also think it's potentially dangerous without having like the traditional parameters that we used to have.
It's so funny you said that you believe that people don't have critical thinking skills, because just a month ago, the New York Times published in their op-ed a piece stating that critical thinking, as we're taught to do, isn't helping in the fight against misinformation, which I read as you can't think critically. So just close your eyes and trust us, the New York Times, which is one of the scariest things a publication can say. I'm a big believer in good ideas will always trump bad ideas in the long term. And the idea that, you know, New York Times and these publications are going to tell us that we, the people, can't think critically, and so therefore we need to just follow their lead, is patronizing. And listen, I agree. I think that some people don't necessarily lack the abilities, but I also think that in order to flesh out bad ideas, we need to give them an opportunity to be heard. And if people are following them and getting momentum, then enough good people that can think critically will combat those ideas, and their supporters will be able to present a more persuasive argument to whatever counter narrative is being followed. So at the end of the day, I just I still think having an open forum, giving people an opportunity to intellectually dole it out is always the way to go.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, you're right. And I agree. I get a little worried sometimes of like just what information is getting out, and that a lot of people aren't capable of like identifying that it's maybe misleading and doing something about it. But related, I actually watched the movie or documentary Snowden this weekend for like probably the third time I've seen it, and I've read his book as well. I think it's awesome. I actually like love stories. There's a little love story in there, and it definitely like gets me like tearing a little bit. But he kind of says in it, and it really resonated with me, was let the people decide. Like put out the truth and let the people decide. And that kind of just reminded me of what you just said. And it's like if you put it out collectively, we will, I hope, choose the right thing and choose what's best for everyone when all information is transparent and it's out there for us. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that's great. One of the things you said that I really want to touch on is that some things can be misleading, and absolutely some things can be. I think the most recent, potentially infamous situation is the past presidential election we had, where we now had social media telling us what things were misleading and not. And this isn't a political conversation that we're about to get into about
on this show.
Yeah. Well, maybe another time, but this
Yeah.
isn't what I'm about to say is not in support of one party or the other. But let's look at something real quick. In 2016, we had an election that a lot of people claimed, and that there were multiple investigations in our government about that the election was tainted, that there was some type of bad actors at play, Russia, things like that. I don't want to get into it, but I'm just going to say, like, matter of fact, that is what a lot of people believe to some degree, whether it had a negligible effect on the election, blah, blah, blah. So that happened. Then we have the Trump presidency, and people are now claiming that that election was manipulated or misled. Something was afoul with it. And then during the Trump presidency, everything was cleaned up. And then during the 2020 election, everything was good. There wasn't like anything that we should like investigate like we did back in 2016. Then we had all the social media giants telling us like, no. Any claim that there was something potentially wrong with this election is misleading. So like, I get very uncomfortable when we say, oh, things that are misleading like shouldn't be posted or shouldn't be talked about, because like we need to evaluate these discussions. Like I don't like, listen, Trump is Trump, whatever it is, but I have a hard time believing that under his presidency, if things were bad in the 2016 election, then all of a sudden they were, perfect during the 2020 election. Like that doesn't sit right with me somehow.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I think there were some things that came out that there was Russian interference in this election, but no one's making a big deal of it like they did 4 years ago, which like, I do agree with you. It's weird that it was a big deal 4 years ago and it's not now, but I just want to clarify, there was some media that said like Russian interference happened again in this election.
But this is the point about the downfall of big brands and publications and the gatekeepers. On social media, those are some of the biggest gatekeepers we have. They were shutting down all discussions of whether or not something had happened in this past election. And I'm really not trying to like accuse that there was something happening, but I'm just saying we should have the opportunity to talk. And the medium of the internet is a very important channel to talk through. And so when we now are relying on big brands to claim that things are misleading and therefore we can't talk about, that's the troubling part for me.
But here's where a big problem lies though as well. So you say big brands end up being a big gatekeeper on social media. The thing is, the only way anyone can have any audience is by using big brands. How do any journalists get an audience? If it's not through the New York Times and building their brand up first through that career, it's usually through the internet. What's the internet run on? People think the internet is decentralized. It's kind of decentralized, but it's not really. Amazon owns half the internet. The other half is probably owned by Google, and then there's probably a small sliver that's owned by like someone just really rich. But how are you going to get your stuff out there? If a big brand does not like what you're putting out, they will mute you. They'll put you out. They did it to Parler. They did it to a couple of the social media outlets. And why can't that eventually happen to just a journalist is possible, or to just an individual on Facebook or whatever it is. So like, yes, social media was a big gatekeeper, but and Facebook was a big gatekeeper, but will that be stopped if people have their own websites? It's not as easy for Amazon, I guess, to shut down all of these websites, but there's still going to be a gatekeeper, I feel.
Maybe. So Jack, whoever nominated Dorsey, yeah. When he came out saying that they were going to ban Trump, deplatform Trump from Twitter, he went on a Twitter tweet thread thing, and he wrote that one of the reasons he is very supportive of cryptocurrencies, and one of the things he is going to try to work on, is decentralizing the internet, and so preventing us from having those gatekeepers. So I think you're right, that right now there are a good amount of gatekeepers, and there are only so many options. Although I would push back to say that it's not. I don't think it's that difficult if people try to shut you out for you to keep popping up somewhere else. It may be difficult for your followers to find you, and that may be the most important thing anywhere. But I do think in the next 10 years or so, we're going to see a new version of the internet that is insulated from some of the powers that be that we have now.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that's coming, but I don't think we're there just yet. But I want to segue the conversation a little bit, definitely still related to big brands. Do we really need them? Or is the new age, new way of thinking kind of getting rid of that? So we were talking about journalism. I'm thinking more along the lines of like work and education. Traditionally, 50 years ago, you had to get a degree to get a job. Then you had to get this specialization degree to get a job. You need to get this license to do this. And a lot of those structures are starting to fall down. Right now, the first, I guess, industry where it happened was in tech. If you're really good at coding and you can prove it to the company, they'll hire you. They don't care if you have an education or not. And that was like, I think, the first thing to really be like, we don't care what you have as long as we know what you can do. If you can do it, you're good. And then they even, like, Google has a side certification that you can complete in like a couple months so that they know you're good for their jobs. I feel like that's going to happen. I don't see why that doesn't happen already in a lot of industries. Why do I need a 4-year degree to be a teacher? Honestly, I don't really understand why. I didn't go to school for education, and I'm managing fine. So like, why do some people need to get a 4-year degree to go to be a teacher? In order to get my license, I think I needed a 55% on the praxis exam. Why can't I just take the praxis, get a 55%? I like aced it anyway, but why can't I just take the praxis, get a 55% and start teaching? Why can't I just start doing finance? Why can't I be a lawyer? If I can do the work, if I can write out the proposal for whatever it be, for real estate, I'm trying to buy a property. If I can write out the law, a lot of it's not that technical. Why can't I do it? Why do I have to pay a lawyer just to put his stamp on it?
Well, a couple things.
Real estate might not have been the best example for that.
No. So I really do believe that a lot of those things you can do for you. You don't need a license to teach yourself. You don't need a lawyer to write your own contracts. You don't need, a doctor to tell you to, well, obviously for a prescription, you will, but like, you want to do your own experiments on yourself. I think there may be some law somewhere, but whatever. the question comes when you start dealing with other people, like you may like you're dealing with, transactions that you just need to have certain language in them to protect yourself and whatever else, or medicine. I think we all agree that like there should be some qualification. So you don't think there should be a qualification?
I kind of think I should be able to get whatever medicine I want. I don't know.
That's go ahead.
Why are you, or why does a doctor have to tell me what I want to put in my body? Why don't they tell people not to put Coca-Cola and Snickers bars in their body? They're keeping me from putting these prescription pills in my body. I honestly feel like a lot of foods we eat are worse than those drugs. And why can't I have access? There's a couple of drugs, one that I got illegally, metformin, which is supposedly known to elongate your life by 10 to 15 years of good quality life. Not just live 10 years longer, but have 10 more years of your life where you're like active and engaged.
Yeah. Why? By the way, anyone who's watching this video, Jeremy's actually 65. So
yeah, exactly. Well, I just started my metformin like a month ago. And there's a lot of people who think metformin within the next 5-10 years is going to be legal to buy over the counter. But why isn't it allowed right now? I think that's BS. That I need a license to say that I want to take this drug.
Yeah, but I just think that I think that in order to prescribe medicine to other people, there needs to be a baseline. I think there is a separate question whether or not, and if anyone who's seen Dallas Buyers Club, I think one of the major themes, or something you could draw upon from the movie is, if people want to take a certain thing and they're at risk and they don't have many options, why do they need a doctor? Why do they need the FDA? Why do they need these higher powers to bless them with the right to take those things? And I think that is a whole conversation that can be had. My impulse, and I maybe haven't evaluated this enough, is if you're going to put on the white coat, the white lab coat, and you're going to present yourself as someone knowledgeable in medicine, then you should have a baseline or some type of barrier. Now, another license.
What if my barrier, though? What if I watched YouTube videos and read publications and doctor papers, whatever, for 20 years, and I just studied my ass off, and I knew more than the doctor who graduated from Temple University? Who's to say that they know more than me because they have a piece of paper? Like, I studied my ass off. Why can't I just put that all on a website and you determine if you want to use me or not? You determine if you want to believe all my qualifications and what I'm saying or not.
But if you are right about what you are writing about or researching something like that, like, it should be able to manifest itself as some type of research or something that can be more or less replicable, and going through the scientific method to prove its efficacy of some sort. So I guess that's my pushback there, that if you really do know your shit, like, there should, maybe there isn't, but I think there should be ways to prove it in a manner that would allow the powers that be to kind of give their approval for more widespread adoption.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think a lot of people would end up not listening to it just because, like, you don't have a piece of paper. Similarly, this isn't the best example because it's kind of a counter example, but I think you'll get the idea. Is like, a lot of people said Trump wasn't qualified for presidency because he wasn't a politician. I don't think Trump was really qualified for president. I know we're not talking about politics, but why can't someone be qualified for something just because they don't have like the education that everyone else has? To me, just doesn't really make sense. And I feel like if you can do a job, that's all that matters. And I like the idea of having people review you. And if you get 10 reviews and they look good, that will tell me that you know what you're talking about more than the degree hanging on the wall that says you graduated from this school. That really just doesn't tell me much and doesn't like convince me that someone's qualified anymore.
Yeah, I think there are lesser professions that I believe require some type of license. For instance, in a lot of states, in order to be a barber or salonist, whatever they call, they require a license, and I think that's kind of ridiculous. And I think that is just meant to protect the vested interest at B, the people that are already in the industry, or the people that give out the certificates or whatever else that give you approval. So I think that is just nonsensical, because like if you screw up someone's hair, then like, okay, whatever. If you injure them, there is recourse there. So it's not like they're insulated from liability. So I think those professions, I don't think anything of, to think that like, yeah, if you're good at what you do, you should be able to offer your talents to the world. Medicine, you know, medicine's the biggest one for me. Like law, like sure, you should understand why certain words and terms are used and how to read certain documents. I don't necessarily think it's brain surgery, but brain surgery is brain surgery.
Yeah,
So like
no,
we should have a baseline. Like
yeah.
I want someone with the pedigree opening up my brain, not like, you and your, miracle drugs.
Yeah. But all right. So last thing that's pretty related, but a little bit of a segue is then language. So with all these changes, does language really matter of speaking correctly? And I just had to like think about that, because it's not speaking correct, it's correctly, adverb with the verb. So like using the right parts of speech, using high vocab, using the right commas and parentheses and semicolons, does that matter anymore? Because most people just type on their phone LOL, KK, whatever. And if someone understands what you're saying, does it matter that it's not written professionally or the right way?
Well, so the first thing I want to attack is the idea that like using certain high brow vocabulary. One of the first things they taught us in law school is stop trying to sound like a lawyer. Like if you can't explain something in simple English, then you probably don't know it well enough. And not only that, people don't like when people use like, sophisticated vocabulary a lot. And so that's the first thing, that like even some of the smartest people I know have a uncanny ability to explain things in a succinct and simplistic way that doesn't require 10 syllable words. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, the language is a tool, and it's a tool to communicate. And so I think the question then becomes, what rules do we need to abide by in order to communicate with each other? And so I think there are some rules that are becoming outdated, and there still needs to be some. Like we can't just be saying you can spell a word any which way, because then whisper down the lane, I before E, and then it becomes I after E, and then the C gets moved, like, whatever. And all of a sudden the word is just unrecognizable and things like that. But I think there are certain norms of punctuation, I was taught growing up, never start a sentence with the word but we do that all the time. So like that rule is ridiculous. So I think language is ever evolving. As long as you can communicate with people and people can understand you, I think we'll continue to see language continue to evolve, and some of those rules become outdated.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think we're completely at the end of the episode, but I'm gonna share what I learned this week because it's related to this. So, and I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but I'm gonna take it like it is. Meme stands for maximum effort, or minimum effort, maximum effect. Meme, MEME. And I never knew that before. I had no idea where the word meme came from, but it makes a lot of sense. Is like a meme can tell you more than a 3-page essay sometimes. Like what a good meme, when it really hits you and like there's a lot of understanding, it says a lot. And I feel like that's kind of a little bit of like where I guess language has started to kind of go is we're saying whole stories now in one little word or one little picture with a couple words. And I don't know, I feel like that's a little bit of the progression of language. I still think like I actually do like language and speaking correctly in certain cases. I don't think it needs to be done all the time, but I think like if you're writing an email, you should write professionally. You should use the right grammar. You should use the right words. You shouldn't use shorthand and all of that. And like a letter and something formal. Everything else, I kind of don't care. If I'm texting you or if I'm texting even a colleague, I'm cool with writing THRU instead of THROUGH. It's a colleague, someone I work with, but if it's not a formal instance, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I still think there is a time and place for when you should speak as well as you possibly can.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So should I dive into what I learned this week?
Yeah, I guess we will go towards the end. My bad.
No, it's all good with me. So I'm reading this book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One. And it's basically all about something that I've.
Who's it by?
It's by Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, I knew that looked familiar. I like Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, pretty cool guy. And for those of you that have been, listening, you know that I've kind of said something like this in the past, where I'm really starting to learn about how much your mind alters your reality. And I want to read out a passage. It's going to take me a minute, but I think this is truly fascinating. And I literally wrote in the book, "Holy shit!" So I read this a couple of days ago, and I was like, I gotta read this on air. So. Here we go. We may believe that we can change our brains by thinking, but what effects, if any, will this have on our body? Through the simple process of mentally rehearsing an activity, we can derive great benefits without lifting a finger. Here's an example of how that literally happened. As described in an article published in the 1992 Journal of Neurophysiology, subjects were divided into 3 groups. The first group was asked to exercise by contracting and relaxing one finger on their, left hand for 5 one-hour training sessions per week for 4 weeks. A second group mentally rehearsed the same exercises on the same timetable without physically activating any muscles in the finger. People in a control group exercised neither their fingers nor their mind. At the end of the study, the scientists compared the findings. The first set of participants had their finger strength tested against the control group. A no-brainer, right? The group who did the actual exercises exhibited 30% greater finger strength than those in the control group. We all know that if we repeatedly put a load on a muscle, we will increase the strength of that muscle. What we probably wouldn't anticipate is that the group who mentally rehearsed the exercise without actually doing it, just mentally rehearsed it, demonstrated a 22% increase in muscle strength.
So there's 22% and 30%?
Yeah, so there's 3 groups. The one that physically did the exercise, their muscle strength increased by 30% compared to the control group. The group that just thought about it, like mentally went through the process of this is what I would do if I was physically doing it and visualizing it, they increased their strength by 22% without literally lifting a finger. That's wild. That's so wild.
What was the third group?
The third group was just the control group. They just sat there eating potato chips. They didn't do anything. But like that's wild. Yeah, so that's what I learned like this week, or at least about that study and thing. Yeah, it's just God,
so what are you doing so much. How's that changing you?
So what I'm doing now is I have my vision board here. I'll let the group see it. So I got my vision board here, and I have it in my journal that I try to write in every day. And instead of just like looking at things, I try to imagine as best as I can the feelings and the sensations and the work that gets input to all of them. So I have things related to my physique and my body, things I want to accomplish, things I want to have, things like that. And I try to put myself into that world, or my future, and kind of flash forward the feelings of, one of my things here is I want to publish a book and be a best-selling author. And so like kind of flashing through the periods of cranking out the book and like seeing the pages get longer, seeing myself email a bunch of publishers, editing it over countless hours, doing it, and then literally like envisioning myself getting the phone call that I made the New York Times bestsellers, like hugging my mom, doing things like that, and doing it with like a smile on my face and just like trying to like reimagine the sensations and everything that go along with it. So that's what I've started doing more of, is instead of just being like, that's what I want, really just like go through the mental process of rehearsing how I would get there. So that as I'm writing or as I'm exercising or eating healthy or things like that, it's more of a deja vu than it is like a first experience. It's something I've already rehearsed in my mind. I am now just executing upon it.
Yep. No, that's kind of what was going through my mind when you were saying it. It sounds like kind of meditation that I do, of just like visualization, and just visualize where you want to be, and you're more likely to kind of get there, or you're working your way towards it. So that's pretty cool. And I actually just saw an article too. I don't know enough about it to comment too much on it, but and it definitely makes sense, as you said, like what you think alters your reality. And I read something that like the whole world is altered by all of our thoughts, which obviously, if one of our realities is altered by our thoughts, obviously everyone's world is going to be altered. But basically it was saying like the fabric of the world, or like the way the world goes, is reliant on like the collective thoughts of everyone. And that's kind of just wild to me. And that goes back to, I think, like in episode 2 or 3, when you first started thinking that I was pretty weird, was when I said, I think that if everyone thinks we can fly, that you can fly. And I believe that. And I think what you just said to me is a little bit of proof there, where it's like, if everyone can visualize us flying, the whole world, if we really believe it, we're more likely to be able to do it.
I just don't know. I really
love your reactions when I say that.
I don't know how we came from finger strength to flying, but
we're getting yeah. I mean, it's related, but
yeah.
Thing is though, like there's a lot of things that we don't know, or that don't seem possible, that when something comes about, it's gonna make more sense. Supposedly, I wish I like was more knowledgeable on some of these articles. I'll try and pull them up next time. But there's like a new way to harness the electromagnetic field around Earth, whatever, something that will completely change the way that we harness energy. And it'll basically make it so that there is an abundance of energy. We'll never be able to use all of the energy that we can harness if this new like theory comes to light. And it's like something that didn't seem believable probably 10 years ago, definitely not 50 years ago or 100 years ago. All of a sudden, now there's some people who think, hey, we might be able to have like unlimited energy. I am of the belief that we're a couple breakaways or breakthroughs away from someone saying, hey, we actually might be able to fly too. That's what I think.
So that's what Jeremy thinks. Yeah. I'm just telling you to visualize life a little bit more. And yeah. Yes,
I like it. All right, yeah. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, why not, guys? Right. I'm sure we've talked enough and you guys are spooked at what we have to say. So thanks for tuning in.
Highest viewed episode. Thank you for tuning in. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys did too. Comment, like, subscribe. Shout out to my boy Alan. He's commented like 3 times now. Appreciate that, Alan. He said Zach was not Zach. What am I saying? He said Jack was spitting one of the episodes. Definitely made my day to just hear a comment like that. So, and by spitting, I was slang like he was spitting the truth, not like literally spitting out while he was talking. Just want to clarify that. But Please comment, please like, please subscribe. And one of these days, maybe one of you will be on an episode and we can hear from you directly. So thanks again. Appreciate everything. Have a great rest of the week, and we will see you next week.